Robby.
So,
All right, so you think for sure the silver cases, that's knowing my sensibilities.
Yeah.
This is number one for me?
I would say that would be number one for you, and because of all those things we said, I think it's beginner friendly enough, and the story and the characters compelling enough it would keep you interested.
Okay.
And you said it yourself, like you tortured yourself with Heavy Rain. The game is so much better than Heavy Rain. It's like just the uniqueness.
Well,
of
that doesn't matter. I mean, I'll play platinum it either way, whether I like it or not. So.
Your sickness takes over. Okay, so a game that I don't have here on the table, but I do have a burn of it, which is super legal.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Because his
Research
actual
purposes.
his in storage. His backup, his legally created backup.
It's a very rare game, legally created. But it's called, and this one is so fucking awesome. It's called Michigan Report from Hell. And what you do in this game is you're a cameraman. And this one is like so this is some of these games are very much like, he kind of gives up on like telling a story per se. And it's more about like, I want to make a weird ass game where like something that you've never thought of before. And I'm going to focus in on the gameplay part of that.
Michigan Report from Hell.
Michigan Report from Hell.
You're in Flint, Michigan. Got it.
I don't know if you're in Flint. You're in Michigan, and let's say fuck it, we're in Flint. You're at Michael Moore's house. You just watched Roger and me
drinking glass after glass of
delicious,
contaminated water.
delicious leaded water. So in this game, Michigan Report from Hell, you play as a news cameraman, and you're following around this female news reporter, and you are rewarded with points. The more salacious material that you film. And so not only like are you if someone gets killed and it's like a horror game, so people are dying left and right, like decapitations, arm rips.
So you're just wandering around the streets looking for death?
Yeah, kind of. But then also too, I did mention earlier, sexuality plays a whole big role in a lot of these games too. You get bonus points for being a creepy camera pervert.
What is this game, Brian?
I'm telling you, you just get in the mix. Michigan Report from Hell. So that one, it's never been released anywhere.
What a punchline!
You didn't even let me finish the fucking story. Never been released in America. Okay. It did come out in Europe, and so that's where you can play it in English. There's a European version of this game.
Oh, shit. Best episode ever.
And that's how I played this masterpiece of a game.
Wait, hold on. Do I get to ask my question?
You please, fire away.
Okay. Without me offering anything, what kinds of crimes can you film in the game?
So, bunch. So the story is about like it's kind of like a apocalyptic type thing. Like shit's going wrong everywhere. So buildings exploding. If I remember, it's been years since I played it, but I think it's like an undead type of a story. So like for example, if the sound guy on your crew is getting his face eaten and you don't help him, but you film your camera and capture the action, you are rewarded. Just like when the buxom lady reporter is like climbing up a fence, if you go low with that angle, you get more points than you would if you were really far away. Yeah, it's like again, like this is subversion. It's like a fuck you punk ethic. Like I don't care if this ruffles any feathers. And to be fair, like this game came out in I think 2003, 2004. Not a whole lot of feathers to be ruffled at that time. Like it's almost expected of the PlayStation 2 era to be like this kind of. There was a game that came out in Europe called 7 Deadly Sins. That was like, do you remember, it was a Sims knockoff that came out on PC called, I think it was called Singles or Single Life.
Nope.
The whole point of that game was like, it's The Sims, but porn. So like, it wasn't outside of the norm, or it was very much like in line with the early 2000s. So, but if this game came out today, fucking forget about it.
Cancel.
Big time. Like, and no one would be able to accept such a disgusting, titillating thing.
So even at the time, Europe only released. Was it released in Japan?
I don't think it was. I could be wrong on that.
Incredible.
It's not on my notes, but I'm pretty sure it was a European
Europe
release
only release on the PS2. You said,
yeah, PS2,
and has not. I probably can't find this in the PlayStation Online store.
No, you
it's
can't.
probably not there.
You can find it in my library.
Your backup copy.
My legally obtained backup copy for archival and research purposes. So yeah, that one, when people think of Suda, that's the one that always, like, I think opens up, like, it raises the eyebrows most of all, because it's like, oh boy.
A little bit.
Yeah. But again, it's like, and then the gameplay wise, it's like almost a first person shooter. Like, you're a cameraman, the gun is your camera, and you have to, like, have a good aim and all that good stuff. So, moving right along. This game right here, which we will be playing on a Let's Play, this is what made Suda51 famous.
So the prior game did not end this guy's career.
No.
Instead, he goes on to make Killer 7.
Yeah. In fact, if anything, he was rewarded for that. And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier or not, but like I think I did, but it bears repeating. So Grasshopper manufacturers, like the way that they work, and it started way back when with Silvercase, they would cycle through publishers, and they would do this intentionally because, like, they would never sign like a multiple game deal, although they would with No More Heroes, and we'll get to that when we get to that series. But it would be like, hey, I'm Suda, I make these weird games, you in and you out, baby, come on, make the deal. And they'd be like, yeah, let's do it. We're going to publish one game, and he'll be like, yeah, that's all I want from you assholes, because it kept him independent. And when we talk about indie games, and we did an episode about that, like, there's a very clear definition of what, like, today, indie game, I think that term is used a lot more for marketing purposes, and there's a certain style when you broadly think of indie games. Suda51 is like truly an independent developer in that he refuses to let publishers tell him what to do with his games. So it's either you like accept this shit or you don't. He will find the money to do whatever he wants to do. And sometimes that's to a detriment. A lot of his games do come off as a little low budgety because he can only get so much money from these publishers. And so that's kind of like, that's the risk-reward scenario of working like this.
Never bothered you, though.
No, good Lord, no. I will power through every single time. But yeah, and I really, really admire that. And I think on that Indie Games episode, we kind of talked about that in terms of my taste. I love truly independent media, independent movies, music, all that other stuff. And the reason why I love that stuff is when people do want to be challenging and people do want to tell whatever types of stories that they want. And without any fucking regard of like offending people or whatever it is. There's a line.
An authenticity there that you appreciate that's different from everything else that the mainstream audiences, like me, are consuming.
Yes. So like I go back to guys like John Waters. Like John Waters' early career, it's gross. Like there's a lot of really, really gross stuff. Like the ending of Pink Flamingos is infamous. Like people would watch that movie and throw up in the theater. Now I'm not gonna sit here and tell you like I'm like this every single time I watch Divine.
This is new.
Shit. Yeah. Like it also makes me feel gross, but the challenge of it, the fact that he did it and was saying like it's like the G.G. Allen approach. Of like I don't care at all what people think about me. And I love to, from afar, I love to admire that kind of stuff.
Don't get too close, Brian.
You don't swim with sharks, baby. If you do, you go in a cage. And that's how it's done.
a poop-filled cage is where you end up with if you get too close to G.G. Allen.
Pretty much. Okay, so Killer 7 was kind of a breakthrough hit. It was a part of the Capcom 5. Do you know anything about that?
Nope.
Okay. So in GameCube, middle of the life, when it's not a certain done deal that the GameCube is dead. It would happen shortly after the Capcom 5, but there was this little window of time where like Nintendo wasn't super happy with sales, but it wasn't like a dire thing yet. And Capcom, a fellow Japanese publisher, like really kind of said, "Hey Nintendo, we've always had this really good relationship." Nintendo, like reciprocated by saying, "Hey, buddies down the street in Capcom, do you guys like money? Because we have a whole bunch of that. So maybe we work on something together." And that came the Capcom 5. So Resident Evil 4 is a product of that. A game called PN number 5. I can't remember. It's a kind of a forgettable game outside of the style of it, but PN number 5 we'll go with. There's a game called Dead Phoenix, which never materialized. And then there's Killer 7. And I think that's 5 games that I listed.
Four plus one that didn't come out.
There you go. So, out of all those games, obviously it goes without saying Resident Evil 4 was the fucking smash success, clearly. And Resident Evil 4 changed the genre. It also influenced Gears of War and, like, influenced the next, like, 15, 20 years of action games, for better and worse. Killer 7 came out and did what Killer 7 did, and there's nothing like it. Like, it is... So... And when we do the Let's Play, I'll go into a little bit more detail about why I love this game so much. But right off the bat, when I turn this game on and you see it, if you don't instantly have a reaction like, "Well, holy shit, this is like something that I'm looking at, it's very unique," then like I don't know, your eyes are dead or something. Something is wrong with you if you see Killer 7 and
just my soul's dead.
Just your soul, yeah. Well, they're not real, so it doesn't matter. But like if you don't see something like Killer 7, which is this year 20 years old, and if you don't like, you don't have to like it or like think that the style, the art style I'm talking about in particular, like might not be everyone's cup of tea, but you see it and you know right away that it's unique and there's nothing else that looks like it either before or since. So that's that. The table's set there. Okay. In a nutshell, it's another adventure game, very heavy noir elements. You play an assassin, Harlan Smith, who has this weird power of like anyone that he kills, kind of like the Highlander, not unlike the Highlander. Anyone that he kills, like he kind of absorbs like their soul, so to speak. Yeah. And then he can, again, going back to Japanese media, he can kind of spiritually regurgitate that soul out, and now it's a real thing, and it can do stuff. Okay. So the Killer 7 refers to the 7 assassins that you play with. They all have the last name Smith, and the one character that you don't ever control is Harlan Smith, who's like the ringleader of the whole troop. But so each character has like their own unique play style and their own like unique little thing or gimmick to them that's necessary to progress in the game.
Okay, and what does it play as in terms of the gameplay?
So this is the bridge that you
I got another bridge. A lot of bridges here, guy.
So I think this is probably the single most divisive thing about this game, and it's really, really black or white.
Well, okay, I mean, we haven't done the Let's Play yet. Will this affect my impression of the Let's Play?
I don't know. Let me get it out, and then you can rattle. I do think it's important that you know ahead of time what you're getting into before we play it, all right. Because it is a very unique thing. But so when you look at this game, you see it as a first-person adventure game or a first-person shooting game, because there's like shooting gallery, rail shooter, and by rail I mean rail shooter is obviously like a Star Fox or a Panzer Dragoon type of game. Yeah. It's a little bit more. It's less kinetic than those games, a little bit more stationary, but it's you move a reticule around with the left stick, not the right stick. So that's one thing that you kind of have to turn your brain off to figure out. But the most divisive element of this game is the way it's controlled. And I think it's fucking super unique. And it's like, if you ever play a game, and I don't know if there is one out there, there could be. This game's really influential. But the way you move is you hold down, and it's very GameCube specific. Like you look at the GameCube controller, there's a giant A button in the middle of the controller. Right. So when you hold that button down, the character just automatically runs. And then you get to an end of a screen or an end of an area, and then these really cool like comic book looking panels come up that give names to other areas. And then with the left stick, you highlight one of those areas, and then you push A again, and then you proceed. So you'd never have direct control of the character's movement ever. It's just the A button, which to a lot of people, like they just hate it. Like they want to directly control their character. That's fine. For other people, it's like a unique way to play an adventure game, and it kind of cuts out bullshit because like you don't ever have to worry about getting lost. You cannot get lost in this game because you're literally on a track. Yeah. But like you still explore things. You go and like let's say you solve a puzzle in one area, it'll unlock another area that you have to backtrack to, and all of a sudden that comic book panel will be open. When this game came out, people either loved that or they hated that mechanic, and I think to this day it's very much still like that. I'm interested to see when you play it and you actually get a feel for it. And when we do the Let's Play, we're going to start at the very beginning, so that you can get a feel. Like it does a pretty good job of like jumping you right in, and you get a feel of what the game is going to be like for the next however many hours it takes you to beat it. So that's the gameplay mechanic. It's an on rails adventure game / shooter. In terms of story, it's way the fuck out there. Like obviously the Killer 7 are all these assassins. The story is like this weird geopolitical like alternate history version of the 21st century where every country agrees that nuclear war is a terrible thing. So in this event that they called the fireworks, every country that has nuclear armament launched all their nukes into space and got rid of all nuclear power. And so now it's like, cool, all right, everyone loves each other, but they don't because it's geopolitics. Yeah. Like they immediately start backstabbing each other, and because Suda 51 is Japanese and he has his own political takes on how Japanese government works, a lot of that stuff is kind of injected in the story, which is admittedly going to be a little bit hard for a Western audience to follow because we don't know the ins and outs. We don't know why we should be mad at certain people in Japanese politics and vice versa, that kind of stuff. But the translation does a good enough job to like kind of keep that stuff flowing evenly. But again, it still has that element of like you gotta be able to go along with like these really out there high concept things. There's a lot of psychology involved in this one. A lot of discussions about mental illness and like how that can manifest itself in real life. And obviously it does. Like mental illness definitely in real life, unfortunately, rears its head. But I think the big takeaway from this game is the style, the aesthetic, and the way that it's played. And again, like there's really nothing else like it. And it was to the point where Suda 51 for hardcore game nerds that follow this kind of stuff. And I think if you weren't so deeply invested in World of Warcraft at the time that this came out, which you were. This is 2004 or 5, I believe. 2005.
The deepest dungeons of World of Warcraft is where I was at that
time. So, if you were more into console gaming at this time, you definitely would have heard about this game. Like, there's no question about it because it was talked about a lot. It was looked forward to a lot. Then when it came out, it instantly had a bunch of fans. It's considered a cult classic today. Of all of the games on this table, I think Killer 7 is probably the most interesting in terms of like it as a complete package. Like the music, the story, the look, the gameplay, it all fits together really, really, really well. So whereas I think Silver Case probably appeals to you directly in terms of the stuff that you're into, I think Killer 7 would be game number 2 for you to try. And maybe you can alternate those. Like if you wanted to start with Killer 7 because it is his most famous game, you wouldn't. That's certainly a smart thing to do.
So when we talked about Kojima in the past, and you've described him as an auteur, one of the things that you said is that there are things in Kojima games that are like, oh, this is a Kojima game, and there's just kind of like a common thread that makes something feel like it's a Kojima game. Would you, other than the narrative and the dialogue and the way that the stuff is like outside the box, would you say that about this guy? And specifically what I'm thinking about is like types of gameplay, the types of things that you're doing in the game. Because what you've described, it sounds like the gameplay itself is very, very different in all these games. Yeah. They're only similar in the sense that he's doing really outside the box stuff with dialogue and with themes and very mature narratives. Yeah.
So that's one of the things I love about Suda so much is like his games are vastly different. Like they're kind of all over the map in terms of the gameplay and how he takes maybe a kernel of an idea of like a particular genre and just explodes it and does his own thing with it. In terms of reoccurring themes, absolutely you recognize the Suda game from a mile away because like you have the characters that go over throughout all these games. Sumio is the biggest one. He's in like every one of these games. He's a bit player in the No More Heroes series. He's even in Killer 7, does a little cameo there. He's a lot like, what's his name from Sid from Final Fantasy. Like every Final Fantasy game has a Sid. Every one of Suda's games has a Sumio. But yeah, the style, the hyper stylization of things, like the adherence to like old noir aesthetic and lighting and all that stuff, it's in everything. The only game that doesn't do that from a visual standpoint is Flower Sun Rain. It's very bright and very like fun and cartoony looking. Although there's violence and all that other stuff in there. And actually, that game reminds me a lot of the Dire Straits music video. Like, totally looks like the Dire Straits music video, Money for Nothing.
Of course. I mean, is there another video? Dire Straits video?
Certainly not. I would say that there's no other music video other than that one.
That's the only one you'll ever need to watch.
But yeah, he. So I think whereas the difference between if we wanted to make a difference, a contrast, if you will, versus comparison, Suda takes. There's a lot more of like a humorous lean to the stuff that he makes. He doesn't take himself nearly as seriously or as stuffy as Kojima, and that's not a knock on our guy, because I love Kojima games, and I love the fact that he takes himself so seriously.
Yeah.
But Suda doesn't. It's very much like, fuck it, like, death metal, or like, Bruiser Brody rules, right? And you're like, he sure does. Give me more of that shit. Yes, let's do pile drivers in games. And that's another thing, like, there's pro wrestling in every one of his games. Like every one of his games either has
American pro wrestling.
Well, in particular, so he was a kid when that stuff, when your Stan Hansens and your Bruiser Brodies were in a league called All Japan Pro Wrestling, and the biggest stars of that company were gaijin foreigners, and Bruiser Brody in particular, he would just run out into the audience and then would just fucking chase after civilians. And like if you
Japanese civilians.
Oh God! And if you were dumb enough to stand up to him, all 6'6" coked out of him, and like try to take him on, like he'll whip you in the face with a chain. And they loved him for that. So there's this sense of chaos and anarchy that Bruiser Brody in particular provided wrestling at the time when he was a kid. Suda was a kid. He took notice of that and injected that into a lot of his games, which is a great segue to go into the No More Heroes series, which is another one. This is the original one on the Wii. This was a big deal when it first came out on the Wii. It is an action game that third person. You want to talk about some mundane stuff. It's hard to even get into this one, but
tell me about the weed whacking you did in this game, bro.
So you literally weed whack in this game. That's, I don't know, you must have seen something because that's literally one of the things that you do.
Is that really?
Well, you mow a lawn. You mow lawns. Okay. So where to begin? His big influence on this series was Grand Theft Auto. He's a huge fan of Grand Theft Auto. And he wanted to make his own version of an open world game, which is kind of hard to do when you don't have a lot of money. Ubisoft stepped in and said, hey, we love your work. We want to work with you. Here's some cash. Let's see what you can do. And he was adamant about doing something on the Wii. He was actually one of the first developers to see the Wii before anyone else. And he instantly got this idea for this game. And so like he saw the Wii remote and he's like, well, that's a fucking lightsaber. Yeah. And so in this game, like you swing around this lightsaber with the Wii remote. One of the coolest things, I can't remember, like you recently brought this up. There was a game where, the character talks through the speaker on the controller. And you were like, wow, that's so cool. And I was like, yeah, it was cool in 2008 when No More Heroes did it.
I think the modern game that did that was one of the Horizon games.
Okay.
You talk about, or Returnal even, I think.
So in this game, and it's such a little bit part, but it's so cool. Like, not only would the character talk to you, but it was at a quiet volume on purpose. So you literally had to hold the thing up to your ear like a phone. Yeah. And so the character would talk to you like on a phone call. But the storyline of that game, so you're Travis Touchdown, like Mr. Quarterback USA. He's an otaku, which is like a video game nerd, a very specific type of nerd is an otaku.
Who's a good-looking quarterback guy, but also a video game nerd.
So Travis Touchdown is Suda 51.
Okay.
So that's what it's like how the $1 Million Man was supposed to be Vince McMahon. Travis Touchdown is Suda 51. He's a Japanese guy who's obsessed with pro wrestling, video games, and American pop culture. And why not? He is a good-looking man, so why not make this guy good-looking as well? So fuck it.
Why not?
So in this game, the story is kind of similar to Killer 7. You are an assassin, but it's very much more gonzo, where like the story is about like he's an assassin, but he wants to be the best assassin in the world. And there's this list of other assassins, and he's like, well, fuck it, I got to kill all these assholes so that I'm recognized as the number one assassin. Yeah, okay. And that's all the plot you need, baby. Right. So the series goes off, and we're running long here, so I'll wrap it up with No More Heroes. Brief mention of Killer is Dead. I won't go too much into detail on this one, but
you're cutting it short now.
Well, we're at like an hour and 7.
I know, but you just. This is by far the most inspired I've ever seen you on the show about the topic.
Sure.
You have notes. We're an hour and 7 in. You have easily another hour of content.
So easily, so easily. But I'm trying to keep it fresh and moving right along for the people.
You drove the train all right.
So Killer is Dead is, I would say, his most playable action game. Like this game is just a fun video game. It's got a great weird story noir. There's a dating sim that's baked in there as well. But in terms of like, in terms of gameplay, just throw it in there,
sprinkled in,
it's just peppered in. But it's a really good game. I recommend this one. I think it's also on Steam. It's probably always $1 as well. But I'll wrap it up on No More Heroes because that's, I think, aside from Killer 7, it's the thing that he's most famous for.
Well, wait, say real quick, because in the last 3 years, I think, a new No More Heroes game came out on the Switch.
Yes.
Like, pretty recently, right? Like the third one or something?
Well, I have it on PS5 as well. So, let me wrap up this one first, because the Wii one is the first one. It's an important game. People were clamoring at the time for Wii to have like a mature action game that was very much like, this is a hardcore video game for hardcore video game fans. The Wii, as you obviously well know, was, derided as like every other Nintendo system ever. It's for kids, bro. Kids, yeah. And so here's the Suda 51 game. How's that? Shut up, right? Like, you don't get much more mature than a Suda game. So it was a big deal when it came out on the Wii. It's got its problems, and they are as follows. It's this open world that's dead. Like, there's just nothing to do there.
Nothing in it.
The things that you do in the game is, like, you mow a lawn, you shake a tree for coconuts, and that's kind of it. Okay. You got to reach, like, the action elements, and, like, the boss fights are great. They're very Kojima-esque. Like, all the characters that you fight are very, very unique and instantly memorable, just like Kojima bosses are. So you can tell that's, like, big influence on him with that. In Part 2, which also came out on the Wii, but I have the Switch version here. Part 2 took everything about No More Heroes, same concepts, but the one thing that they fixed, and for the better, if you look at the back of the box, like, all the weird, mundane side quest stuff have been turned into really fun 8-bit games. So, like, there's Rad Racer.
Yeah. Is that...
Well, it's not actually Rad Racer, but it's like they're clearly, like, they made a Rad Racer.
Rash, but yeah.
They made a Rad Racer game that you play, and that's how you get currency and stuff to buy costumes, all that other shit. In No More Heroes 1, you've got to mow a lawn a bunch of times to get money, and in No More Heroes 2, you play really fun.
You play Rad Racer.
You play Rad Racer and, like, a bunch of other 8-bit games. So there's this other one that came out called Travis Strikes Again. This is an early Switch game. This one's really weird. It's a third-person action game like the others, but every single level or scenario in the game is unique. There's like a board game type thing in there. There's like a game that reminds me a whole lot of Berserk, which, if you haven't watched my video on Berserk, that's in there. That one suffers, unfortunately, from of all the games on the table. I think that one suffers the most from the low budgetedness of it. But what's funny is this. So it's on the spine. You see the Grasshopper logo, but this game was actually co-funded by Nintendo. So, like, they really could have, like, put a lot more time and care into that with Papa Nintendo bankrolling it.
Well, especially at this time with the Switch. So.
Yeah, exactly. So it came out in, I think, 2017 or 18. So really early on in the Switch life. But if you love No More Heroes, it's absolutely worth your time. Let's talk about No More Heroes 3, and we'll wrap it up here. I own it twice because that's how much I love it. The Switch version came out first, which was same deal. It was co-published by Nintendo, and they had a year of exclusivity with it. So the plot of E.T.
What?
Here we go. So imagine, if you will, let's go for this ride together. Okay.
All right.
So Elliot meets E.T. They go on a tremendous, like, boyhood adventure.
That's right. Coming of age story.
Yeah, coming of age story. You know, they hide in the closet, the Reese's Pieces, the finger, the getting on the bike, all that stuff. The first 5 minutes of No More Heroes 3 is E.T. Like, it's the exact same story, right? And at the end, there's this real heartfelt, like, I have to go back to my home planet. And then, like, you see him reach up into the sky, and it's all beautiful, hand-drawn animation.
Okay. Drew Barrymore doing cocaine in the background.
She was only drinking at the time. She was merely a toddler who was drinking at the time. And now, as a talk show host, she gets very oddly close to her guests, like this, like fucking this,
with intense looks
and just like stares them down.
We're having a moment.
Yeah,
I love it.
What a weird person Drew Barrymore is, but good on her. So anyway, that's the beginning of this game is E.T., and then after that heartfelt, like, I have to return to my home planet. You see Timmy, or whatever his fucking name is. Now he's like the CEO of, like, a company like Microsoft. And then E.T. comes back down, and he's this big, buff, badass world killer. And he's just like, hey, what's up, Tommy? Remember when we used to eat Reese's Pieces together? Yeah, so I'm here to blow up your fucking planet. And he's like, whoa, I didn't sign up for this. And then Q getting Travis Touchdown out of retirement, and now he's got to go after all of the universe's most dangerous assassins.
Who are all coming to Earth at the behest of E.T.
Yeah, who is this world eater, like, third eye, like...
Wait, why was E.T. nice to the boy in the beginning then, if he's trying to kill the world?
See, these are the questions you shouldn't ask, because they don't matter. These are.
I thought we were friends.
That literally is a line that he speaks. It's fantastic. But yeah, when this first came out, I remember on our Discord, I would tell you, you and the Good Prince, play this game. Play this game.
You were selling it.
It's so fucking good. It's so fucking good. It's so good. I bought it on 2 platforms. It's so good.
Yeah.
So real quick, I'll say, for the Switch version, if you have no other way to play it, it's fine. It works. It's okay. It's 30 frames a second at best. If you have a PS5, obviously play it on the PS5. It's in 4K. It is blazing fast, which you kind of need in an action game.
Turns out.
And yeah, it's great. Oh yeah, one more thing, real quick mention here. And I actually just learned this. So there's another game I don't have on the table. It was a PS3 and 360 game called Lollipop Chainsaw.
Oh yeah, I know that.
You know that one?
Well, I know it because at E3, the booth babe, there was a lot of that. A lot of Lollipop Chainsaw, a lot of the cheerleader protagonists, whatever, all over video game sites. That's how I know it. That marketing worked.
Okay. So I just recently learned this in my research. So that's the game that I kind of skipped.
That's a him game?
Him and fucking James Gunn.
Oh my god!
Like the James Gunn, the head of DC James Gunn, which is really really weird to me. I just skipped that one. It came out at a really bad time in terms of like it was surrounded by other really good games that had my interest. Yeah. And I kind of took a look at it and I was like, you know what, I'll get that one when it's $20.
I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a Killer 7 to me, so like I'll be fine. And then I just have never gone back to play it. And now it's super expensive. It's like a hard to find.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, it's like
it's like another zombie game.
Well, there's another reason why I skipped it. It just kind of it looked like look, not you can't always churn out a hit, and to me it looked like that was like a down period.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the other one not on the table, but I do own. I just realized I didn't put on the table, but Shadow of the Damned, which was a Shinji Mikami co-production. Shinji Mikami, famous for obviously Resident Evil.
Obviously.
Obviously. But that game is awesome too. It's like Resident Evil 4, except for you're fighting demons instead of zombies. And there is a level where, go ahead and go for you to your reaction here. The entire level takes place on a pretty naked lady. You just walk around a gigantic naked lady.
Wait, is there areola shown?
Big time. Oh yeah. So yeah. Anyway, we can wrap it up here. If there's any closing, I'll say my closing comments, and if you have any closing questions, we can go into that.
Okay.
What I'll say about Suda51 is this: there's nothing like him. He's super unique, super authentic. I love his shit. I hope he continues making games deep into his 90s. I hope he continues being really challenging and subversive and all that stuff. When I think of where video games are now in this point in time, where AAA games are they just suck. They're just bad. They are boring. The budgets are so overbloated. They cannot possibly hold my attention. Even the fucking good ones. Yeah. I have to force myself to sit there and try to play. And it's a real shame because I'm a lifelong video game fan, as you are as well. But when I think of this guy being out there and he doesn't have the same access to money as some of those other companies do, like it breaks my heart a little bit because it's like, well, what could he do with $200 million? It would be incredible. It would be just fucking bananas crazy and incredible. But it is not to be, and maybe that's for the better. Yeah. Because I am a firm believer, really firm believer in working within the confines of constraints. Because I do think levels of creativity are only achieved when you're in a box. And
what if G.G. Allen was given $200 million? Would that have been better or worse for you?
G.G. Allen would be dead in a blink, like literally a half a human blink. If he got $1,000, he would be like, "Oh, heroin? Yeah. Oh yeah, we're banging that $1,000 right now, dead." And so we wouldn't have gotten all of his wonderful works of art. So yeah, Suda51 for me is he's one of my tippy top guys. I mean, Robby, I made fucking notes. I made notes.
I am definitely interested in about 1/3 of these games, probably, which is a lot more than I thought I would be before this episode started.
Sure.
And you give such a good sell, Brian. I mean, I am really impressed and inspired by how into this you are.
Yeah.
So I think for sure I'm going to probably check out the Silver Case, and then. I'll at least do some Googling and maybe watch some YouTube videos about that creepy Euro game that never came out.
Michigan Report from Hell. Yeah. And you are going to be playing Killer 7 because I'm going to force you to play Killer 7, and we'll see if that grabs your attention. So yeah, that's Suda51. I've been waiting to do this episode for a long time. Yeah. And what better time than now when I'm really down on video games.
I'm glad we could take you to a happy place today.
Indeed. Well, I think we should end this one on what we need to end this one on, which is a gentleman's handshake. So here's 5 fingers. Here's 1 finger.
Oh.
And that's the Suda51 gentleman's handshake right there.
I thought about this one.